Steve, and I make everything, and welcome back. About a week ago, a viewer, Nicole, who reached out to me and said she was a complete newbie and really wanted to get some understanding of just getting the laser up and running to understand RE3 on the Muse, but other users will have this same problem with whatever tool and whatever laser they have. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to do a quick video for people who are first-time laser users. So you just got your laser and you don't know what to do. And start pretty much from where you start when you get your laser pulled out of the box and walk you through everything that you would need to do to just get the first laser cut and engrave out of your laser. And to do that, we'll use RE3. We'll do a bit of a network setup so that you can understand how to make that happen as well. So let's get going on this. All right, so I've started up the laser. You'll get the usual homing of the laser that happens first. Don't worry about it. And I'll agree to all of the warnings. Okay, so it's starting up. Now, what I did with my laser is I did a factory reset on it, which is not something you normally have to do or want to do necessarily. But it allows me to get, if you just took your laser out of the box and this is the first time you've turned it on, you can, certainly you can use it. I can move things around right now. But what I can't do is I can't connect RE3, Retina Engrave 3 software from my computer to here. And that's because my network's not connected. Now there's two ways to connect the network. You can use an actual Ethernet cable. There's a Ethernet jack on the side, and you can literally just plug a cable from that into your laser, or you can do what I'm going to do here, which is use Wi-Fi. And I set up a fake network here in my shop for this, and so I can select that network and I can enter my password. Of course, it's all top secret. I'll just cut this piece out in the video. And you'll see a message that says I'm connected to the network. So now your laser is actually ready to go. And if you go to the home, select the home, you can see up in the corner here, it says it's running on wireless. And if you can read this tiny, tiny print, it says it's at the IP address is 192.168.0.185. And if you don't know what an IP address is, don't worry about it. You can type that into your browser just that way. Or you can use, on the side here, it also says that your laser is named fsl.local. And that's the one we'll use. And so we can go to our computer, which is also on the same wireless network, and I can open a browser and connect to fsl.local, and you'll see that I can attach to the laser now. So we'll do that. All right, so I have a web page, a browser open here, and as I mentioned, we can go to fsl.local, which will connect to our laser, and you can see, here we are. Now, we can do all the usual things here, but what I did was, to make this easy, and I'll bring it up over on this screen as well, I just created a simple little drawing in Inkscape, just to kind of walk through this piece of the process as well. So if I have an image in Inkscape, it's normally an SVG, and you can use Adobe Illustrator, you can use any drawing tool, actually Corel. And so I just use this one, and what I'm going to do is save this as a PDF file. And PDF files are good because this image will have two things we care about. And actually, before I do that, I'll just do one extra thing here, which is I'll turn these into actual objects, or paths rather, and I'll select all of those. And we'll just combine them just to make handling things easier. So I really have two elements now. I have the hello world and the hand, the waving hand. And this is really all we need. The red outline is something we'll cut. And so when we actually do this, we'll do this using both a raster, which is the image itself, and a vector, which will be the outline. We could just use vectors or just use rasters, except rasters, you don't get information to do a cutout. But we'll leave it like this. I'll put this file up on my GitHub as well, so you can pull it down and play with it if you want, but you can create your own in about 5 minutes if you've ever touched a drawing program. So in Inkscape, the way to save this as a PDF is we can save it, a copy of it, and it doesn't really matter what we call it, I guess, so we'll just call it hello, and you can pretty much accept the defaults there. So now if we come back to Retina Engrave, and again, every laser will have similar software that can do pretty much the same kinds of things. Certainly Glowforge has, and Epilogue and Trotec, you name it, they all have them. So what we want to do is bring that image in here, and there's two ways to do it. We could go and find it in a file browser, and we could drag it in, or we could use the import here, and that's what I'll do for this. There's our hello file, and as I mentioned, I'm going to bring in both the raster and the vector because we want to do an engrave as well as a cut here, and so there it is, and we can grab it and move it over. It doesn't really matter where we put it. And if I turn off the raster, you can see that's what the vector looks like. So all of these are just vector lines. And similarly, if I turn off the vector, you can see the image. Now note that on a raster, it still draws the outline, although it's just going to be engraved at this point because you don't cut from a raster. So we'll turn them both on. Now what I'm going to do is expand the vector, and you can see that it's made up of 3 elements, and I mentioned this in Inkscape. We have the first element, if I can find them here. Here, let me turn off the raster to make it more obvious and turn on the vector. So we have the hand, the hello world, which we combine together. We have the hand, and we have the outline. So that's the 3 elements that we're going to work with the vector. And then if I turn on the raster, we only have one thing, the raster. Now, a little caution, if you notice the raster here is selected, if I grab something and move it, I'm only moving one layer, so I didn't move the vector. So that's not cool usually, unless you don't care about one or the other. So what I'm going to do is hit this undo button up in the toolbar, and if I said, no, wait, I really wanted that, I could do a redo and I could put it back. So that's what those 2 buttons do. And so what we'll do, because we have the raster, we won't want to do a vector drawing of the hand, and we won't want to do a vector drawing of the text. So what we have left is just the red outline, and if I turn off the vector, the raster, you can see it. So what it'll do now is draw the hand in Hello World as an image, basically, and also put an outline, and then the red cut line will happen, and it'll cut this out of whatever material I have it in. So in order to move both, getting back to movement, if I select the PDF file itself, then I can move everything. And so anytime you see, well, you moved the wrong thing, you can always hit undo. Next on our list here is the materials. And for the raster, we don't actually have any set. So we'll pick for the 45 watt laser, and you can see there's a bunch of kind of pre-built ones there that come. It's, I guess, loading them from Full Spectrum Laser in our case. I normally use my own, but since I restarted, I did a factory restart. These are coming from somewhere, and it's not me, but it's close enough. So what we're going to say is we'll pick, if we can find an 1/8 inch birch plywood, we'll use that for the raster. So we're going to engrave, this is engraving. And for the vector, it actually does have my materials because I loaded all of my custom ones, and I'm going to do a cut on the Baltic birch, and I'll actually slow this down a bit because I noticed my laser was not cutting completely at that speed. So there's our materials. So we've selected a material for each of these, and now if I select the raster, you can see over on the right hand side it puts up this raster properties. So there's a couple of things we could do. If this was an actual photo type image, we could say do a halftone dither, and then what you'd get is more or less grayscale. And but here we just have basically a black and white image, so we'll just use threshold. And again, we could select our material, 1/8 inch plywood, wherever it was on this list. And then we could also check or play with the resolution. This is really not a high energy kind of photo. It's not high precision. So 250 by 250 is fine. But if you really wanted a nice clean photo, you could go to 1000 by 1000. Keep in mind that to go from 250 by 250 to 500 by 500, that's actually 4 times as much work. It's 250 and 250 on the horizontal and on the vertical, so that's times 4. So it'll take 4 times as long, and the 1000 will take 4 times as long again. So keep that in mind when you're wondering why your job is taking such a long time. So other things we can look at here. So we looked at kind of these menu options over here. The settings we can look at. There's not a lot you're ever going to play with here, but if you have a rotary tool, like if you look in the previous video, I can link it up here, where we had a rotary tool, the setting was relative. Here it's absolute, so 0, 0 is in the upper left corner of the workspace, and 20 inches by 11 inches or whatever the height is, the width is on the laser, is the bottom right hand corner, the one closest to you on the right hand side. So so you basically have pixel resolution on the workspace. Other things you might want to play with here are, if you're worried about things like speed or the order things are getting printed in, you can enable vector sorting or disable it. I have it enabled, which means going back to the project list, element 2 will get engraved, and then element 1, and then element 0. And we always generally want our cut to be last, so that's why element 0 is at the bottom, and we'll print it in that order. The next thing is reverse raster direction, and because I did a factory reset, I'll actually turn this one back on. What this does is it starts printing the job from the front of the laser and working its way back, so any smoke that's coming off the laser isn't kind of building up on the material. It's getting sucked out right away. It's just a cleaner way, usually a cleaner way, we'll say. And there's a few other things you can play with here, but for the most part, the factory defaults are good. If you have a rotary tool, you could turn it on here, and you can certainly play with defaults. So if you're using some material 90% of the time where the speed is always set to 50%, you could just set it here so that anytime this comes up, it would be 50%. You saw the network, we played with that already, and your IP address is here. And there's some editor settings. Editor is some of the other buttons up in the top here. So that's the materials. And these, honestly, these 4 options here, plus a bit of project manipulation, is what you're going to be using most of the time. Again, you can rearrange things, so you can say I want to put elements here or there. You could actually move the whole vector ahead of the raster. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could. And let's put it back in the right place here. So other things you might want to play with are the workspace, and we need to home the laser, I guess, to get our workspace enabled. I should do that. And then you could do a perimeter scan. We appear to be in relative measurement here for some reason. So let me restart the laser, and I'll come back to this. The rest of this is we can zoom, and it's smart enough to know if you have something selected, even if it's way over here, when you hit zoom, it always brings it to the center. There's you can play with movement here as well. This will fit whatever our image is into the screen, and we can do kind of pan and zoom stuff. And if we care about snapping things to particular spots, we can snap it, or we can either show the grid or not show the grid. So a really basic kind of manipulation over here. When the laser actually is ready to go, we can hit this blue triangle. It's actually a blue triangle. It's disabled right now. And that will be the one we use to start the job. So let me go home the laser and reset it. And then we can actually get this job going. Okay, so I homed the laser, so now everything's enabled here. If the first thing I want to do is just scan my workspace. I laid down a piece of birch material there, so I can click this button here, and it will basically do, if you have a camera on your laser, it will capture the workspace. If you don't have a camera, I'll show you how to do it with a perimeter run. So I have a camera here, so I'll do it this way for now. And what it'll do is take 9 photographs of the workspace, and you'll see them come in here, and then it will stitch them together so that it looks like one cohesive photo, and that will show you where the material is sitting on the workbench, so you can either move your drawing so it fits on there, or move the material so it fits where your drawing is. It's easier to do the first one rather than the second one, though. So it's done our 9 photos, and when it comes back here, you'll see that we have the actual photo. It's all weirdly rendered, but don't worry about that. Now, notice here that it won't fit on this material. So I can pick this up, and I'm just clicking the arrow keys on my keyboard, so I can move it around precisely, or I can actually select it and move it with the mouse. Now, notice it doesn't actually fit here. So what I'm going to do is I want to scale this, and again, make sure that everything is selected here, or you'll only scale 1. Now there's this little button over here, which if it looks like that with a hollow in the middle, then you can scale on each axis individually. Or if you click this, it will scale proportionately. So if I resize X, it'll resize Y. Actually it'll do that if I grab a corner. And so if I grab the corner and just make it fit, you'll see that it's now small, and notice I just resized it. I didn't have to do anything strange. It just grabbed it and resized it. Now, over on this side, this is really kind of the status of what the workspace is looking like. So what it's telling us is we have our image here selected, our hello world, and this tells you where it's sitting on the bed. So if I said, well, I really want this at 3, and my project is in inches by default. So if I want this at 3, you see that it actually moved up here. And I don't, so what I'll do is I will use the keyboard to bring that back down to where I want it. And so those are the positioning things. If you said, oh, like if I had this material and it was kind of longer in one direction and it was opposite of what my image looks like here, I could use these 2 buttons up here to rotate it. So I could rotate it that way or that way. And sometimes you'll get into situations where This particular hand, if it's kind of facing us, is a right hand. If I said no, I want that to be a left hand, I could do that, and I could mirror it. Now, of course, the text is backwards, but we could actually select it individually because this is a PDF file, and I could flip it backwards. Actually, I can't because it's a raster already, but you can use the mirror image to flip things around. The rest of these buttons up here, and you'll see more over on this side, they're really for doing drawing in place. So if you said, well, I don't want to use Inkscape, I want to use my own draw, I just want to draw it here right on the laser bed, you can do that. And it's quite powerful actually, but it's not as powerful as pretty much any drawing tool. But if you just have a quick job and you just, like if I just wanted to say, oh, I want to stick something here, a bunch of X's, I could do that, and it would actually be here, and you can see there's a bunch of X vectors there. Actually I didn't put them in, but because I need to type them from the keyboard here, but so I can just put a bunch of X's. I don't actually want that. So if there are things in your project that you don't want to engrave or cut right now, you can do two things. You could certainly select it and delete it, or you could just turn it off so that you saw it now disappeared. In this case, I'll delete it, but you actually saw me do that with the vector here, where I turned off the two pieces of text because I don't want to, or the text and the hand rather. I turned off the vectors so that I don't do this twice. Anyway, we're pretty much ready to go here. The last thing I guess I should do is make sure that the settings are right for the cut, and that will be 1/8 inch Baltic birch, a cut, and we're ready to go. So one thing I want to do before I start this job is I'll do a perimeter run, and I'll show you what's actually happening over in the laser. Okay, so that quick video is the perimeter run. If you don't have a camera, you'll use that all the time. You won't really have a choice. But even if you do have a camera, sometimes it's just easier. You see how quick that is relative to doing a full 9 photo image of the workspace. I tend to use them about 50-50. So when you're running the perimeter, the red dot is basically showing you where the outer edges of the cut are going to be, and then you can move your material into the right place to make that so that it fits on the material. And that's it. And we can kind of wind up this demo. Well, we'll do a couple of things. There's a couple more buttons up here. One is the estimate time. So down in the bottom here, it will show you that this job will take about 6 minutes and 18 seconds. All these little fills here will take quite a while. If you've ever used a 3D printer, that's 6 minutes is nothing, but on a laser, that's an eternity, it seems. I won't talk about the tracing background image. I actually did a video, and I can put a link up here to talk about that one. It's, if you have an image on your workbench, on your workspace, you can scan it and then replace the material and draw it on a different piece of material. And then I mentioned the drawing things here, but if you're using an Inkscape or Adobe Illustrator or some other drawing tool, you won't really have to pay too much attention to these buttons here. Same with the remaining buttons over here that are disabled. Like a typical drawing tool, you can have layers here, so that's what these buttons are for, and then you can do merging. So but we won't cover that in this video. The intent here is just to get you to a first laser cut. And so we're now ready to hit the run job, and we'll cut this out, and I'll record the job for you just so you can see it actually working. Hold on here, we can't start the job yet. We haven't talked about focus. Now, on a Muse 3D, there's a camera built in, so focus is automatic. Now, you can manually trigger that autofocus just by hitting the autofocus button on the front panel, but in general, it will just automatically do it when you start a job. Now, if you have a PS professional laser or a Muse hobby laser, or any other laser without a camera for that matter, you have to do focus manually. Now, I don't actually have the focus puck. Most lasers will come with a puck that you can slide under the laser nozzle and just drop the head and then slide it out, and your laser will be in focus. So do one or the other of those before you start the job, otherwise your laser will not be focused. This is more important certainly for the manual focus lasers. So let's do that, and then we can start our laser job. Okay, job's done. We should be fully able to upload an image to RE3 now and bring it to the laser, engrave, cut. And when you're done, if you use this image I provided, you'll get this nice image here. Let me see if I can get it into some kind of focus. It's not as dark as I normally would have done. The settings to make it a little darker, just print a little slower, just do a slower engrave. So slow the speed down. You can up the power, that'll make the engraving a little deeper, but slowing it'll make it kind of burn a little more, so it'll be slightly darker. And if you want to see how that stuff works, you can see my materials video, which I can link again up here someplace. And there you have it. Hopefully that helps you out. And as always, if you like the video, make sure you like it and subscribe and hit the bell so that you get notified of other videos. I know this video is a little basic for some people, but there are people in the channel that are new who literally just got their first laser. Nicole, who I did this video for, fired up her laser for the first time the other day. So, and if you are new, you want to know where to start. And this was the intent of this video. So hopefully you got something out of it, and I'll see you next time.